West Virginia is a state that went overwhelmingly to Donald Trump in this last election. He won by a 42-point margin, and even back in 2012, Mitt Romney beat Obama by a 27-point margin of victory. So to simply just say that this state is conservative is an understatement. This is a deep red state. Now, when I tell you something like this, if you're a Democratic consultant, you just automatically assume that this state is unwinnable. It's part of the reason why even Democrat officials from this state, like Joe Manchin, pretend to be Republicans, because they just assume that everyone from this state is ideologically right-wing. They're going to agree more with right-wing economic philosophers. But Bernie Sanders recently stated that he doesn't necessarily buy into this red state, blue state dichotomy.
I think essentially, and why I really dislike this red state, blue state business, is that my personal record, and what I believe to be the case, is if you talk common sense to people, if you ask people, do you think your kids should be going to tuition-free public colleges and universities? You know what people will say overwhelmingly? Yeah, I do think so. Do you think we should give tax breaks to billionaires? And people say, you're out of your mind, you're crazy.
Now, this may sound counterintuitive, because if you live in a red state, why would you buy into the economic philosophies of a social democrat who believes in bigger government when you simply believe in smaller government? But I mean, at the end of the day, Bernie Sanders is proving that these ideological disagreements don't disprove the fact that we all just want the same thing: opportunities, education, but we just have a different belief as to how we can make these things come to fruition. Now, Bernie Sanders is starting to really prove that this red-blue state dichotomy may be false, because by just going to these states and talking to people and explaining to them how Republicans and Democrats have been screwing them over, well, they're going to be receptive to this message. Now, Bernie Sanders proved this during a town hall in McDowell County, West Virginia, and he was in a room full of Trump supporters, and they were actually really inclined to agree with Bernie Sanders, and they applauded him on a number of points. So with this next clip I'm going to show you, Bernie Sanders was explaining to them how the Trump healthcare proposal would screw them over, and they were very receptive to his message.
I happen to believe that healthcare is a right, and we should move toward a Medicare for all program. It is no small thing that as a result of Obamacare, 20 million more Americans got healthcare. And many of them never in their lives had health care and go to a doctor when they needed to go, or go to a hospital without worried about going bankrupt. So that's a big deal. Now, in West Virginia, ironically, because Trump won this state, by a landslide, you are looking, if the Affordable Care Act, if Obamacare is repealed, we are looking at hundreds of thousands of people who got Medicaid extension losing that. And how many of those folks will die? How many of those folks will lose the opioid treatment that they now have? It is a lot. I don't know exactly, but it is a whole lot. But what really bothers me is that when you look at the Republican bill, it should not be seen as a health care bill, because throwing millions of people off of health care is not health care legislation. What it should be seen as is a huge tax break for the wealthiest people in this country. 200 at a time when we have a massive level of income and wealth inequality, where the rich are getting much richer while the middle class shrinks. This legislation would provide, over a 10-year period, $275 billion in tax breaks to the top 2%. So when people tell you, oh, we don't have enough money to invest in McDowell County or rebuild our infrastructure nationally, but we do have $275 billion to give to the top 2% who are already doing phenomenally well, when they tell you they don't have the money, don't believe them.
So, I mean, what he did there was he broke it down in the simplest terms possible. He explained to you how this healthcare proposal is not really a healthcare bill. It's going to throw people off of healthcare and facilitate another tax grab for the rich. So this isn't a healthcare bill that would benefit anyone in West Virginia, and they applauded him when he talked about this healthcare proposal. Now, part of this whole thing that Bernie Sanders does, where he flips Trump supporters, it's not just about talking to them, it's also about listening to them.
Karen McDowell, what happened to the coal industry?
It looked pretty bad, because that's where most of the income for a lot of men that work in this county comes from, is coal mining. And if you're not mining coal, you're doing a secondary job that doesn't pay nowhere near as much. And you can't support your family, you can't take care of what you have to take care of. So I'm happy to be back to work underground in the mines.
Were you working in mines before?
Yeah, I've been underground for 10 years and then got laid off. Had to take a secondary job. It doesn't pay, doesn't have hospitalization or nothing. Now I have all that again. And I just hope that it lasts so I can take care of me and my family. And a lot of coal miners say they love it. I do, but we do it for the money. We do it for the hospitalization. We do it for what it gives us. Not because it's a glamorous job or anything like that. It's for the money. That's why we do it.
Would you do something, if there were jobs here in McDowell County that paid what coal mining paid, gave the benefits coal mining paid, would people take those jobs?
Absolutely.
So I think that this guy's story should resonate with everyone. We all want the same thing. I don't care if you're liberal, progressive, Democrat, Republican. We all just want the same thing. At the end of the day, if we get sick, we want to make sure that we won't go bankrupt due to medical bills. We want to make sure that we have a job where we can support our family, opportunity. We want access to an education that will not just be a good education, but will be affordable. We don't want to go hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt in some cases because we decided to pursue an education. These are things that are not controversial. We all want them. So Bernie Sanders, listening to this guy's story and knowing that he's a coal miner and knowing that it's really difficult to promote coal-type jobs, which are they're bad for the environment, I thought Bernie Sanders had the perfect response.
The choice is not transforming our energy system to protect the planet and throwing people out on the street. The choice is reinvesting in communities that have been devastated by changes in energy and make sure folks have decent paying jobs. And we can do that. We are not a poor country.
So what Bernie Sanders is describing is reminiscent of Jill Stein's Green New Deal, where you look at these communities who relied on coal mining, for example, and you reinvest. I mean, these jobs are not going to come back. The secret's out. These jobs aren't coming back, even though Donald Trump promised that he would bring back coal jobs. That's very unrealistic. It's not happening. So what you do is you move towards a green economy. You invest in renewable, clean technology, and you do this in areas where the economies have been devastated, like this guy. You invest in green jobs in these areas so that way the people who lost their jobs can have new jobs in green, clean technology. And Bernie Sanders heard him out. He acknowledged his concerns. He realized this guy isn't the enemy. This guy isn't responsible for climate change. As a country, as a planet, as a civilization, human beings, we've been irresponsible up until the last, 100 years, where we started to acknowledge maybe all of our industrialization is having a really negative impact on the planet. So this isn't him. The burden of climate change isn't on his back. But as a society, we have the responsibility to take care of these people and not just abandon them as we move towards a new renewable economy with actual clean energy. We look out for these people and we acknowledge that they don't deserve to lose their jobs. We have to give them new opportunities. And Bernie Sanders listened to them, and he didn't respond like some robotic politician. He was sincere. He heard him out. And that's what you have to do. Now, on a similar note, I wanted to share this touching moment from the town hall because I thought it was just so great.
I'm a retired UNWA miner, and I never dreamed that I'd get to thank you personally myself for the bill that you have co-sponsored and how the Senate Bill 175, the Miners Protection Act, which I'm one of those miners that will lose. I'm one of those miners that will lose his health care at the end of April if they don't pass that law. I come from local 1440 in Matewan. It's a little old town on down the river where McDowell's water goes to when it leaves McDowell County, and we're one of the largest locals in the UMWA. We have over 800 members, all inactive. They're all retired. So we look at things different, and we look at our health care and what we've already worked out. We're not going to mine any more coal. our coal mining days are over, and we looked at to have the funds that we worked for
And were
that were
promised.
promised to us taken care of. That's all we asked. And I think it's kind of ironic that a senator from the Northeast
Yes.
takes care of my benefits better than someone like Mitch McConnell.
So, I mean, after watching that, and you all know this is coming, I could only think Bernie would have won. If Bernie Sanders was the Democratic nominee, if the DNC didn't rig it against Bernie Sanders, he would be the president right now, which is why I'm so angry at Democrats, because they ruined their opportunity. They chose to lose with Hillary rather than to win with Bernie Sanders, even though it was risky, and she was very unpopular, historically unpopular. They thought, we're just going to hedge our bets with Hillary Clinton because we don't want to get off of our reliance on big money donors. So Bernie would have won. And look, to those of you who are thinking this is just the exception, this isn't the first time that Bernie Sanders was able to convince Trump voters to agree with his policy ideas. I mean, during the last town hall he had with Trump voters, he converted someone in real time.
I'm assuming that you believe, correct me if I'm wrong, that we should not cut Social Security or Medicare or Medicaid. Is that correct or not?
Yeah.
Okay.
I believe it shouldn't be cut.
Okay. Do you know who is now working very hard to try to do that? Republicans in Congress have a plan under the guise of saving Medicare and saving Social Security, making devastating cuts. That's what Republicans are now trying to do. The other point that you made, which is I think you made it, or both of you have made it actually, is who's going to pay for this stuff? And that is a very fair point. What all of us should know is that over the last 25 years, there has been a massive transfer of wealth in this country from you to the top 1/10 of 1%. In other words, the middle class has shrunk, and trillions of dollars have gone to the top 1/10 of 1%. Do you think it's inappropriate to ask those people to start paying their fair share of taxes so we can adequately fund Medicaid and making public colleges and universities tuition free? Is that an unfair thing to ask?
I don't think it's an unfair thing to ask. The 1%ers, they got rich off us.
That's right.
So it's time they put back.
Okay. That's all I'm saying.
So look, I watch these town halls. I see how Bernie Sanders interacts with people, and they know that he cares. He's not running for an election right now. He's doing this because he genuinely is concerned about their well-being. And this is why Bernie Sanders is the most popular politician in the country. A new poll just found this out. It's because he's genuine. He's not rehearsed. When I hear Bernie Sanders speak, I'm not worried that he's bullshitting me. Bernie Sanders is someone who is genuine. And if more politicians were just real, they just had organic conversations with real people, then we would be in a much different predicament than we are right now. So when people ask me why I'm so hard on Democrats, when I hate Republicans and Trump so much, this is why. It's because you have to be like Bernie Sanders. But the fact is that they don't want to be like Bernie Sanders, so we have to invest in a new party, the Green Party, or we have to start a completely different party, the People's Party, with Bernie Sanders as the head of that party. Because Bernie Sanders is proving that this red and blue state dichotomy, it doesn't really exist. We all want the same thing at the end of the day. You just have to listen to people and hear them out. And Bernie Sanders is proving that time and again.
Support this podcast by joining the independent progressive media revolution today at humanistreport.com.